Hello, my light beings. Happy Meditation Monday. Okay, I'm just playing around. Notice that I have some wasabi peas in the background there. That's very ideal in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. Not at all actually. We're going to be talking about the Eternal Yogi and the concept of Vajrayana today, okay? A very, very complex, deep, profound topic. So if you're not looking for something very heady or deep to contemplate, probably not the right video to watch today, okay? But this is going to leave you with a lot of vitality, a lot of juice in order for you to really understand this process, as I've now begun to understand what even is going on, right, with my whole spiritual process, and how now I'm starting to link it back to my own culture. Watch this video today. That's all I can say. I'm inspired. I'm inspired. Greetings and Flomashkaram and Flomaste. The flow in me sees the flow in you. My name is Sumedh Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy. And I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today we're talking about the Eternal Yogi. How do you incorporate some of these yogic powers into your own life? And how do we bring it into an authentic modern replication of all of these ancient practices, right? Obviously, there's some very transgressive practices that make you want to purge, actually, if you think about them, some of them. However, you know, I personally choose to see those more as metaphors rather than actually doing those things. Of course, there was also some sexual practices like Tantra, which the monastics actually weren't allowed to do. So that process would actually happen through the lay people who want to actually reach the level of some of those monastics, those monks, right? In a sense, because the monks are celibate in a sense. Let's start to really understand what in the world is going on, okay? In terms of yoga, in terms of the Naga yogis, as well as my personal understanding of Vajrayana and how you can try to incorporate it in this modern context. Now again, I'm no expert on this topic. This is just my own interest, and this is from watching the movie. These are my takeaways from watching the movie Naga, the Eternal Yogi. So if you watch that movie, you'll understand some of these concepts and what I took away or what I absorbed from watching this. The first thing I wrote down, which is again my quote today, is travel with the sun inside of you as your only baggage. That something in that language just really spoke to me. Carry the sun inside of you just reminds me of that willpower has got to be fueled through devotion, through some kind of practice that strengthens that sun or that solar energy within. And if you maintain that within you everywhere you go, you don't need anything. So that's the thing that they said, is that yogis don't need anything. Their needs are constantly being met through their practices and the way of their life and their beingness. So that's, first of all, a very big revelation for me as I was going through this process and watching this. The whole process of yoga is like reducing your thoughts and raising the spirit, reducing the thoughts and raising the spirit. There's also one particular part where they're talking about the breath of the tiger, as it links to my own heritage. The tiger symbolism is very powerful. Yogis actually, you think they're comfortable, but they live without comfort. They are actually putting themselves through this turmoil, or not really turmoil, but I guess you would say suffering or sacrifice. And the fire is the allegory for their sacrifice. The fire is symbolic of sacrifice because they throw everything into the fire, their material possessions, their everything. They throw their family behind, right? They choose this path, and it's like commitment on steroids, right? Is devotion, is bhakti yoga. So bhakti is devotion to the divine. There's certain practices and processes, of course, they do. Like there's this dude with like really long like fingernails, and he just holds it up. The tapasya, right? Tapasya, and it's kind of a process that they do too. And it's said that certain yogis, hold this position for like a really long time, like 10 years or something like that. So that's really wild to me. There's certain yogis that just stand for years and years. They've never sat and they've never laid down, right? That blows my mind, and the fact that they just can follow this yogic diet and they have these skills to just circumnavigate life so easily, but at the same time it's not easy, right? Because they go through this process, this grueling process, where they're just purifying themselves all the time. They're cleansing, detoxing, purifying. They're staying empty, they're staying open-hearted, open-minded, right? It's amazing. They're constantly meditating, and they're in perfect physical shape. Well, some of them are, you know, in a sense, they aren't like the most physical specimens, you know what I mean? But they're like some of those old men, you see them and you're like, hey, that's pretty good, you know what I mean? Other times you see these really obese yogis as well, and I kind of, you know, there's that too. However, I think it's the vibration of austerity that they mentioned. Austerity or sacredness creates this vibe where they get devotees wherever they go, or people following them wherever they go, because people crave that essence or that life force energy. If you can be that walking permission slip for others to access the divine, which is what one of the sadhus said in that, or the Nagas, I should say. It's interesting because the Nagas, they cover themselves with ash, right? And there's one portion where they're talking about the repetition of the word Ram, which represents actually this eternal discipline. Now it's interesting because we go to an ashram, right? An ashram. This is some kind of word alchemy, obviously, that's coming up for me, but I think it's relevant because they cover themselves in ash, which means that they are one with, like, the beginning and ending, right? They're not afraid of death. If they're covering themselves in ash, specifically from the cremation grounds, right, or they have a very specific process that they roll up this ash in this kind of ball, right, and then they crunch it down, and then they create it, they burn it, further creating more ash, and then they kind of wipe that ash all over themselves. Now, a modern equivalent of this that I've found is powerful is just simply, you know, using sea salt, like sea salt soap as a scrub, which actually has been shown to, you know, cleanse your aura in a sense. So it's, you know, you might think of that practice as woo-woo or whatever, but it's been shown, and I've gotten this from lots of practitioners of this art form, that there is something very healing in rubbing that sea salt over you, okay? And you notice the quality of, like, surfers, they have a different quality in their skin, right? Naturally, they're getting sea salt because they're in the sea. They're actually bathing in the ocean, right? And really interesting is one of the yogis brought up this fact of, I decorate my temple with my feeling. And I was thinking, wow, that's a really poetic way of speaking, first and foremost, but I understand what he's talking about. Because you could be in an environment and completely not feeling it, right? But your feeling is what creates the environment and creates the experience for you through your sense perception, through that experience of you being human. So this tapasya is kind of the process of understanding life from within, right? These yogis knew all of life by not even traveling outside of their ashram, you know, or wherever they traveled. Some of them were traveling yogis, right? So divine soul is life and life is divine soul, as one of them was saying, like para atma, atma and para atma. Another thing which was really I needed to hear is willpower makes our soul stronger, okay? You know how they say willpower is a limited resource or whatever? If willpower is a soul strengthener and the soul is eternal, it makes no sense to me that willpower is easily depleted. I think we can access it from this invisible place internally, from the silence, from the 0 point, from meditation, from cleansing and clearing and purifying and staying in that high vibration. Another thing that came up for me, man, is this idea that, man, these Nagas or these yogis, they are just completely so free in their body that they have no shame walking around completely naked sometimes. And I look at that and there's something inside me going, wow, I feel uncomfortable taking my shirt off at times, you know? Why is it that I feel such a, like, I have this body image thing where these Nagas are freely, like, walking around without a shirt, right? So my advice to you, I mean, if you still have that body image or shame, is if you can, if you're in the comfort of your own home with nobody else in it, you can lock all the doors, put all the windows down, and just be naked and live naked if you can. Like, throughout a day, like, try that out as an experiment and just notice how whether you stop, whether it gets awkward, right? Whether you have to kind of be able to maneuver and like, is it difficult to be without clothes? Like really think about that, right? Like, and how does that change your relationship to how you're interacting with the world or your environment even, like around you, right? I mean, that was just a deep understanding for me. Of course, I am starting the tantric path very shortly from the next month. So I'm going to be working with a tantra coach who is a female tantra coach, and she's going to be teaching me some of the arts of, you know, sexual transmutation. And I think this is like perfect timing for this channel because, you know, this channel used to talk about semen retention and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm starting again, you know, I'm relapsing today, I'm thinking, and starting the next month off clean with that. And I'm not going to be retaining per se because I still have to do like different self-pleasure practices during this next month as per the, you know, the process. So whenever it is that I start, I think I'm going to start very shortly from the next month. I will keep you guys posted on that process, and if you have any personal questions you want to ask me about that, I just really want to get rid of all of my habits, you know, bad habits. I don't want to be addicted to, you know, pornography anymore. It's done. It's done. That whole phase of my life is closing its door, and I am fully devoting myself to this new path, which is going to be so much more graceful, I feel, right? There's a lot of gracefulness and gifts, cities, magical powers that are underneath working with the most core basis of our energy, which is sexual energy. That's going to be exciting stuff. They're also saying that you were born as a disciple to the guru of your mom and dad. So think about that, right? That context change, like that really, I started to understand that, hey, you're right. Like, actually my parents were my guru, my teacher, but how did I respond to that? Or like, why do I keep, like, you know, blocking certain advice or not really taking it? You know, I'm understanding there's more and more about where that information is coming from, right? If it's coming from a fear, it doesn't register inside of me. Of course, I'm empathetic towards the fear, but it's like I'm sensing the vibration. And so sometimes we have to not just take people's words, but also understand where they're coming from and their vibration, and whether their intention is pure or it has some weird agenda or some ulterior motive. Of course, if you have an agenda, you better know what it is, right? You can't just leave it like this vague thing, right? Communication helps with this too. Nobody gives these yogis at Kumbh Mela, you know, a map that they have to come there or directions that they have to go there. Their natural instinct leads them there. Transcending thought and freedom, this existential infinite flow through this army of Nagas who don't give a fuck, right? That's what we're looking for as people. We want to walk around like that. Free and just, you know, not attached to anything. Can we, without rubbing, you know, ash on ourselves and becoming completely naked and walking the streets, can we use that as a metaphor for our lives where we expose ourselves? Not literally, but figuratively. We are transparent, we are devoted, we are open, we are flowing, we are transcending, ending the trance. How we see ourselves is how we nurture ourselves. This is something that Ryan G told me today, and it was a download that came in from him, and now I'm sharing it with you guys. How we see ourselves is how we nurture ourselves. If you see yourself as a bad person, are you going to nurture yourself well? No. It all comes down to the self-perception. How you see yourself. If you see yourself as a person who is deserving of care and love, then of course you're going to give yourself that. But if you don't feel like you deserve it, there's something underneath it. There's limiting beliefs underneath. These yogis said that the gurus are our way to travel abroad, right? Because they already have traveled this universe from within. I thought that was a really deep, profound understanding. And also, they say that we don't chase nature. Nature comes to us, like, and I understand that too. That they have a certain pull or a magnetism where nature comes to them and devotees come to them because they're so clean, They're so pure. And hey, some people could be faking it, right? Some people could be like, charlatan, sinister yogis. There's a book called Sinister Yogis, right? There's a dark side of it too. However, let's not forget these ancient practices, and let's try to not overwhelm ourselves with the transgressiveness of it, but really start to evolve and take action from a good state of mind. I think that's what they really taught us. Now let's leave that and let's go a little bit into the Vajrayana, because I've been doing Vajrayana path unknowingly, almost completely like accidental initiation, okay, where I was starting to get dreams of this stuff, and I was just like, okay, time to follow this impulse towards this. There's clearly some information here that needs to be registered, that needs to be processed, right, or integrated. 7 characteristics of Vajrayana. Number 1, it's got to be esoteric, okay? That means it's not easily shared with the public, all this information, right? I obviously cut down a lot of stuff that I say in my videos, right? And I understand if you join like my coaching program or whatever, you get that unfiltered access, obviously. However, at the same time, I'm not meant to be sharing everything, right? All is not meant to be shared. Some things are very personal to you in this process and this journey. It's meant to be kept secret and has a strong magical inclination. Okay? Vajra meaning the indestructible path as well. Vajra also relating to Virya, which is semen. One could argue, but that's one of the essential building blocks of humans, right? So the next thing is to have a Vajracharya, or someone who's a master who initiates you. I'm not doing this half-heartedly at all, I am just taking the plunge and going into this, and it's a big investment too. It's not easy, right? I'm taking out my own savings to do this stuff because I feel that it's my calling. There's something in this that I need to find the loop where I can finally be like, okay, full stop. Now I can use this information to help mankind, or humankind in a sense, to now expand this wisdom or this information of charisma and flow state with the sacred practices. The next one is the use of mandalas in some way. I'm really starting to understand this a little bit more. It represents kind of a hierarchy in a sense as well, right? The mandalas, because a lot of the times they have deities around them, and the way I see them is like you're at the center of the mandala, whatever that is, that's kind of the core frequency, and whatever is around it is kind of the cycle or the process that takes place. It could be like the wheel of samsara, the time wheel, the karmic wheel, whatever you want to call it, right? It is that understanding that there is a center point, and you can be that center point. You can be your own mandala. But the use of mandalas is really important in the Vajrayana practice. The next is using objects with non-dualism, as well as doing the more transgressive types of practices, very taboo transgressive stuff, which is, again, these can either be practiced if you're really like extreme. I mean, obviously take precautions. I'm not advocating these things at all, but I'm just saying that I personally choose to see those as a metaphor. Instead of getting the actual, jeti neti and the nasal clearing, like I have my own nasal clearing process, It's like I'm trying to find a modern equivalent of this that doesn't seem so overwhelming, okay? And you can do this by yourself, because you walk into any Hindu home and they have a temple, a place where they just gather their thoughts, a prayer room, okay, of some sort, where that space is a sacred space, right? But what if you could turn your bedroom into a sacred space for your lovemaking experience? What if you could turn your living room into a sacred space to have very highly intellectual, Socratic, seminar-style conversations, right? So the same, principle can now be applied to different areas of let's make our life a prayer, live as a prayer, live as sacred, live as a sacred being, because you are. The next is the use of chakras and energy channels, okay? This is something that I've been doing for a really long time anyway. Ever since maybe 2016, I've been exploring in that field and looking into that work. Of course, there's so much information about it, it gets very overwhelming, but that work primarily just You know, processes of cleansing, energy clearing, the chakras, working with meridians. You know, this work is really important for considering this path. So the next one, which I think this is very interesting, because it's the use of anger or hatred as a fuel against the negative energy within ourselves for awakening. I don't think there's any other path that says it's okay to be angry, but the anger was got to be directed at your own negativity. I don't know if there is a path like that. I mean, but in Buddhism, there's this idea of wrathful entities that have compassion underneath them. So there's this non-dual merging. They're the walking embodiments of Shiva, those Nagas, right? They're protecting that lineage. So anger and hatred can be used against the negative energy within you, okay? I hate that part of me. Well, yeah, let me look further into it. Let me not repress it or push it away. Let me use my anger. Let me sit with it and allow the anger to be my teacher. Of course, it can't guide me clearly because it needs to be transformed or released or transmuted in some way. So the Vajrayana path, they knew this. They understood this, okay? The next is deity identification in order to help with gaining of some sort of powers or cities, okay? Now, this can be done by looking at a concept grander than yourself, which is getting you in the flow state, right? If you're looking at a deity, that means it's greater than you. You're gaining the powers of these beings using meditative visualizations. Maybe you're using mudras, maybe you're using certain, mantras or chants. But all of these things that I mentioned, man, I've been doing these unknowingly. You see, the deity identification, the chakra work, the esoteric nature of this school of thought, you could say. Pathway, let's call it a pathway, because it's a guidance towards a specific pathway. Those are my realizations. I've realized that, as I go into these ancient, Taoist practices and tantric practices, and re-engineering my relationship with my own body, with my sexuality, with my essence, with my freedom, with my expression, and with my masculine polarity and essence. So it's going to be an awesome journey. It's not going to be easy though, but if it was easy, everyone would be on this path, okay? So here we are, here we go, Upward Spiral Gang. This was just a bit of a rant video today, I know, but this needed to be said. Okay, I saw Shalik Paki yesterday, which means it's a Myna bird, okay? Myna bird, there's so many Shaliks here in Kolkata, right? And it made eye contact with me today again this morning. A Shalik Paki looked at me outside of my window to wake me up this morning. And then I had the call with that Tantrika, and my mother attended the call as well. So, very, very interesting stuff, man. I'm very interested in knowing what will unfold for me. Thank you for watching. Appreciate all of you. Os, may the flow be with you. Hit that subscribe button.